Brad, welcome back to Tuscaloosa. I hope you're having a great Tuesday.
Yeah. Look, this is always a fun week because of the rivalry games. And I think what makes it even better is Thanksgiving, because that long anticipation for Saturday, which we feel in so many weeks, it just seems like it's forever to get to that day. Thanksgiving kind of cuts into some of that time. You get distracted, and next thing you know, it's game day.
Well, Braden, let me ask you, when you look at the significance of this game, not only just the bragging rights, but so much can be lost here on Saturday. Alabama,
oh, yeah.
I mean, they could deliver a knockout punch. As great of a season as they've had, Auburn could set them home throughout the Christmas holidays and the college football playoffs.
It's possible. As we talked about last week, I don't necessarily think that it's over for Alabama with a loss. There are scenarios where they can still get in, but you definitely don't want to put yourself in that position because there are other ways that it could play out where I think they definitely would be out if they don't get to the SEC championship game, or maybe even without winning the SEC. That obviously adds to the stakes, where it's not only for the West, but it's to keep playoff hopes alive to some extent for both teams. And then, I think maybe what makes it different from, say, 2013 is that in that game, so few people around the country were giving Auburn a chance. And this has a totally different feel to it because of the way that Auburn beat Georgia. You remember how flukish that win over Georgia felt for Auburn that year with the tipped pass and the prayer at Jordan Hare, as they now call it, I guess. And so you're like, yeah, you know what? If it took that to beat Georgia, they're not going to beat Alabama. But the way that they did that 2 weeks ago, and then of course combining that with Alabama struggling to get out of Starkville with a win, the injuries that Alabama has been dealing with, and I haven't seen a lot of predictions so far, but I'm guessing that nationally it's probably going to be about 50-50 in terms of people picking sides in this game. So that's obviously very different for an Alabama game. Even a lot of national championship games Alabama has played in, have not been close to 50-50 in terms of the predictions. But I think that's what we're going to get in this one.
All right, we're talking to Brad Edwards right now from ESPN. Brad, looking at it from an Alabama perspective, look at this and tell me where you think Alabama needs to play their best game in a certain area, or maybe even a couple of areas. Where do you think Alabama needs to have a great performance, in other words, to win this game?
Well, I think this is a trenches game. I mean, for as much as we're going to talk about the quarterbacks and the running backs and all the playmakers, the guys with who can do things with the ball in their hands, it's going to be decided at the line of scrimmage. And I think for Alabama, let's just start with the offensive line. In that they need to stay in good down and distance situations. They need to be gaining yards on first down, not ending up in third and long, because we saw the great job that Auburn did doing that to Georgia for most of the game. They slowed down that Georgia running game, which had been so dominant, and they put them in a position that they had not been in very frequently. Now, I will say that I think Alabama has had to deal with third and longs a little bit more than Georgia had to up to that point. And even though most people's instinct, is that Jalen Hurts would not be a guy that you would want in that situation, he delivers more often than people think in downs where he's forced to throw. But that's obviously not Alabama's strength, being in that spot. If they're in third and short, where there's not only the option to run or pass, but you also throw in there the option of the quarterback running. That's something Auburn didn't have to worry about with Georgia, was the quarterback running. So it is different from that standpoint. And I think the same thing is true on the other side, which is that Alabama's got to stop Auburn from being able to have good games running the ball the way that Mississippi State and LSU were able to do. If Auburn is getting into situations where you don't know if they're going to run or pass, and they have the ability to take some shots down the field, Jarrett Stidham is much more likely to connect on those big passing plays in friendly down and distance situations than either Nick Fitzgerald or Danny Etling was. And so that's the concern. You don't want Auburn getting in 2nd and 4 stuff like that, because that's when the doors really open for them to do stuff. And look, I would assume we're going to see Dylan Moses out there again, the way that he played against Mercer. But it was Mercer, which is very different from Auburn. But I would imagine that Auburn's going to look at an inexperienced linebacker out there, and they're going to think of things they can do to try to put him in situations he hasn't seen, and maybe get him to go the wrong way, to peel off of his assignment and chase something he thinks is there but is not. And so I would imagine that to whatever extent they can isolate him and try to pick on him, that's what they'll do. I know they know he's athletic enough to make the plays. It's just a matter of trying to take that guy who hasn't really been out there as much and maybe get him out of position.
Brett, is it fair to say that Alabama needs to be aggressive on the offensive front? I know you and I have talked about this before, but Alabama, maybe the best way to keep Auburn's offense on the field is to keep them on the sidelines.
Well, yeah, that's obviously one way to do it. I mean, I think the other thing is that, if you can get an early lead, not only can you kind of take the crowd out of it some, but you also could eventually get Auburn in a position, if you take that lead into the second half, you might be able to get them out of what they do best and what they want to do in terms of play calling. And so, yeah, I think that going out with the attitude, and look, I mean, this is easy stuff for us to say
Sure.
on a radio show, I don't know that any team ever goes out there trying not to score on their opening possession of the game. That's usually what they want to do. But certainly there are times when you go into a game and you're kind of showing some things just to see how the opposing defense will react to them, knowing that, okay, if they do this, we can come at them later with this to counter it. So I don't know how much of that goes on, but I would expect that though that whoever wins the toss is going to defer. I don't see anyone in this game asking for the ball to start things off. I think they still want to look to their defenses to make plays. But yes, I would agree that the first touchdown in this game will be a big one.
Brad, how much do you think this can be a distraction when you look at the possibility? And we've got articles that I was just reading a couple of seconds ago from a website, Scott Rozelle with Football Scoops, that is reporting that Bobby Petrino is the backup plan if Gus decides to go to Arkansas, that they're going to come after him and they're going to try to draw him into Fayetteville. Some say that he'll listen. Some say that he will not. He bypassed the question earlier at his press conference. I'm just curious if you think of things like that can be a distraction for a team getting ready to play the number one team in college football.
Well, they could be. I mean, I go back to 2002 with Alabama, and Fran was kind of dealing behind the scenes to go to A&M, and I think it certainly seemed like the Alabama players were aware of it, and they came out really flat for that Iron Bowl. But that was different because Alabama wasn't. I mean, it was the Iron Bowl. Yes, you're always playing for something in the Iron Bowl, but there wasn't anything beyond that for them that particular season. So the stakes weren't as high. I just have a hard time believing that even if a team is, kind of disenfranchised with its coach, if they think he's going to leave them, they have enough to gain themselves by winning this game. Not only winning a rivalry game, but being able to go win the SEC, get to the playoff, win the national championship. All of that is still in front of the players, whether Malzahn leaves after this year or not. And so I find it hard to believe that in this particular situation that they would allow their play to be affected by that. But, they are approximately 20-year-old guys, and I think a lot of us who are more mature forget about the things that we were distracted by when we were about that age.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. We're talking with Brad Edwards. Brad, is there anything as you're crunching the numbers that jumps out to you when you begin breaking this Alabama and Auburn game down? Does anything jump out to you that maybe wouldn't make it to the people that are just looking at it from the surface?
I don't think so. I mean, I think anyone in your audience is well aware of how good Auburn's defense is. I think a lot of people nationally know Auburn is fairly good defensively, but I don't think many people think of Auburn as maybe a top 5 defense, which I believe is where we have them ranked in defensive efficiency is 5th. So that, and of course, statistically, Auburn's defense is a good bit better than its offense. I think the other thing that would surprise people nationally, and maybe it would even surprise some people in your audience, is that Alabama is way up there offensively too. Like I think there's this perception around the country that Alabama is a very inconsistent offense, and while yes, there are times in certain games against better teams when they'll have a touchdown here followed by 2 3-and-outs, and then a field goal and 2 more 3-and-outs, and sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's really clicking offensively. But it's hard to deny 49 consecutive quarters of hitting the scoreboard. And so, yeah, I think it'd be really difficult to classify Alabama's offense as middling or struggling, or some of the other words that I've heard by people around ESPN to describe Alabama's offense this season. I think they don't pay close enough attention if that's what they're seeing. So, yeah, I guess that's what it is. Alabama has an offense that's better than people realize, and Auburn has a defense that's better than people realize.
Brad, this game certainly is going to be for the making when we talk about the significance. You guys going to be down in Lee County? You going to be 2 times in a month, or are you guys going to stay in Bristol?
No, we're going to be in Bristol, and then we're at the ACC championship game next month. So unfortunately, we'll not get to take it in. Although our show will be on the air during the game anyway, so even if we were there, we wouldn't be able to see it inside the stadium. So I'm kind of okay being able to watch it on TV up here in Bristol.
What else grabs your attention in college football this weekend, maybe the next big game after Alabama and Auburn?
I'm trying to think if there's anything that really jumps out at me as dangerous.
I mean, can Michigan beat Ohio State? I mean, can they?
I don't think so. I mean, look, Michigan over the last 3 years since Harbaugh got there, they've been a pretty good home team. I will give them that. They've certainly struggled away from home against good teams, not even great teams, but just above average teams away from home. But at home they're better. I just their offense has struggled so much that it's hard for me to see them putting together a game where they could outscore Ohio State. I mean, I think it would have to be similar to Ohio State's performance in the Iowa loss, where they had 4 interceptions from J.T. Barrett. It's going to take something like that to keep Michigan in the game. And I mean, the only other thing I would mention is that Iowa destroyed Ohio State by throwing to the tight end. That's one of the few things that Michigan does well is throw to the tight end. Now, whether that's enough, it's still hard for me to believe that it would be. But I've seen other games in this rivalry where there appeared to be a big gap between the two, and there was either an upset or a very, very near upset. It's very different from the Iron Bowl in that respect, which is that with Alabama and Auburn, usually when one team has everything to play for and the other one doesn't have much at all aside from the rivalry to play for, the team that has everything on the line usually wins in the Iron Bowl. It's not a rivalry that really has delivered many epic upsets. Even the ones that would be classified as upsets, usually the team that pulled the upset was a very good team too. It ranked in the top 10 and having its own conference title aspirations and stuff like that. But it's been a little bit more common to have those types of results in Ohio State, Michigan. So maybe it's possible, but I don't see it. I look around at other ones. I mean, could Clemson lose to South Carolina? I just don't think South Carolina is that good. I mean, their record is good, but I think it's a product of a weak SEC East, in the same way that Kentucky's record going into last week was a product of a weak SEC East. And I don't know. It's really tough for me to look around and find another game that I can get really excited about where I think that a true playoff contender could go down. But you look at Oklahoma. West Virginia has been one of the best downfield passing teams in college football this year, which is a big weakness of the Oklahoma defense. Problem is, Will Greer broke his finger last week, and he's out. And so the guy who does all that damage for West Virginia's offense won't be playing. So I think Oklahoma has a pretty easy go of it, and there's not a lot there. Wisconsin's playing Minnesota. It's just, it's outside of the Iron Bowl. There's not a ton to get excited about.
Brad, let me get your prediction. I mean, I know it's Tuesday. What are you thinking? I mean, don't let being on in Tuscaloosa persuade you, man. I mean,
no,
I want you to tell me what you think.
Last week.
I know, but I mean, the confidence has grown a little bit in Alabama since last week.
I can see that. In fact, I don't feel as strongly this week as I did a week ago. I think it's not because of what Alabama did to Mercer. It's really just seeing Auburn go out there and, at least for the first half, have some moments where they kind of look like that Auburn team that we saw in the second half against LSU, that we saw in stages during the first half of the season. And what it kind of reminded you is that, Auburn hasn't necessarily turned this huge corner. There wasn't this metamorphosis where this is just a brand new team. It is still a team that is going to have to play a pretty clean game, I think, in order to beat Alabama. And against Georgia, no turnovers, very few penalties, and the ones they did have were all 5-yarders. I think Auburn's going to have to do that again. I'm picking Auburn. The reason I'm doing it, and it's as much about history as it is about the teams this year, is that Auburn has a way, and I don't know what it is, but they have a way of cashing in when they have those rare opportunities. I mean, Alabama most of the time is the better team, and it's not even a conversation. But when Auburn does have a good team, somehow they find a way of turning it into a great season, a season to remember. And they've just been so efficient at doing that when they've had those opportunities that I have a hard time seeing them let this one slip away. But this will be, I tell you what, my feeling, if Alabama wins this game, I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a very special performance. And I think he'll have even fewer detractors, coming out of this weekend than he did before. And it seems like every big game he plays in, there are fewer and fewer people who are trying to knock him than there were the previous week.
I said the same thing 20 minutes ago. I said Jalen Hurts can be the few that are still hanging on. He could silence those even more, and the bus will become quite loaded here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, Brad, thank you again for spending some time with us, man. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy some time with some family, and certainly we appreciate you spending some time with us here in Tuscaloosa.
All right, I always enjoy it, and happy Thanksgiving to you and all the listeners, too.